Welcome back to Big Riff Energy. It's episode 81, Tuesday, September 3rd. Today I'm talking about my favorite records ever made. I've done a lot of top 10 lists and top 11 lists. I did one for Revolver about great 90s albums. I've done death metal, thrash metal, doom metal. Usually with those lists, I try to talk about bands and records that I love, but also sort of incorporate historical significance and that sort of thing. Today is going to be different. I'm literally just talking about, I got down to 13 somehow. Any sort of honest representation of the full spectrum of my taste would probably take like 100, 200 records, but ain't nobody got time for that. I got it down to 13 somehow. And it's literally just my favorite records that I've been listening to for a really long time, that I still consider to be like life changers, big significant records just for me. And I'm going to talk about them in the order that they entered my life, chronologically. Thanks to everybody that's been writing in. As always, you can write me at bigriffenergy@gmail.com if you have a question or an idea for the podcast, and I'm cruising through them now. So let's get started, shall we? Number 1, Lynyrd Skynyrd, pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. I remember hearing this band a lot on early 90s soundtracks, and it took me a while to realize all these different songs were the same band. I heard a couple songs on like the Forrest Gump soundtrack. Tuesday's Gone is in the intro of Happy Gilmore, and at some point, you know, it was kind of harder at that time to find out information about songs and bands and stuff like that. But at some point, I cross-referenced everything and realized all these cool songs were the same band, and that band is Lynyrd Skynyrd. This is their debut album. The 1-2 punch of I Ain't the One and Tuesday's Gone is still unprecedented for me personally. I think that's like one of the best 1-2 album opening sequences I've ever heard. Obviously one of the all-time great guitar bands. I could have really picked any Skynyrd record, but Tuesday's Gone is a song that really hit me early on in my life. And I don't know, you can make a point that this is their best record for sure. The thing that I really appreciate about all the Tom Dowd albums is it's a master class in how to record and mix a lot of different components with limited technology. And that's a testament both to him, but also to the band. You know, a lot of these songs have drums, bass, 3 guitars, lead vocal, piano, organ, and possibly some other kind of keyboard. And at times, multiple backing vocals, you know, 3 or 4 gals singing as well. And in these days, you had all of that in a room, and you played and you recorded it. And that's what made it onto the record. And everybody's sitting at the desk, moving faders up and down when they're mixing it. It's a testament to Tom Dowd that he was able to capture all of those different sounds, place them, you know, as far as left-right panning, but also depth. And it's not just a total mess. It's also a testament to the band. Everybody that recorded them or produced them talked about how there really wasn't any improvising. And 3 guitars is a lot. And the thing I love maybe the most about Skynyrd's guitar parts is the fact that they orchestrated the parts, almost like a symphony of guitars, you know, really took advantage of the fact that they had 3 guitar players. And rarely are those 3 guys ever playing the same thing. There's a lot of space being left. They're breaking parts, even like on the next record, the riff for Sweet Home Alabama, you know, it's one guy's sort of picking out a chord progression, another guy's playing a riff, another guy's throwing leads in there. They're never like stepping on each other, and it just creates this massive wide sound. And that's just the guitars, not to mention all the other stuff that's going on. So really, this was kind of early musical inspiration for me too, but also before I even realized it, this was kind of teaching me how to record and mix albums and make them sound great and full and not too crowded and not too cluttered. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? First 5 Skinner records pre-Plane Crash, that's the best 5-album run a band has ever had. That's the first rock and roll record that really got me sort of obsessing with guitar and that sort of thing. Next up, Jimi Hendrix Experience, Axis Bold as Love. Hearing the song Purple Haze is what made me want to start playing music seriously. It's what made me pick up the guitar. And I like the first record a lot, but my favorite Hendrix moments are the ones that are really atmospheric and sad and dynamic. And this record has a lot of that. Little Wing was one of my favorite songs to play on guitar from an early age. Castles Made of Sand, the title track. These are just really, really emotional, powerful, beautiful songs. Again, another sort of like masterclass in how to record and mix a record. Crazy artwork. Hendrix is still my favorite guitar player. So at this point in this list, I'm probably about 12 years old. I discovered Black Sabbath some point around this time. And the first Sabbath records I heard were Paranoid, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and the self-titled. But when I heard this one, Sabotage, I've talked about it a lot on here. This was a real game changer for me. They sort of invented thrash metal on this one. I talked to Athanar a little while ago and just mentioned the word riff, and he immediately said Symptom of the Universe. You could say that's the first thrash metal riff. And thrash metal is sort of the next subgenre of music I discovered after Black Sabbath. So it was kind of a big deal for me to hear something that aggressive and heavy, you know, that came out in the 70s. But even more so, it's, again, dynamics. The song Thrill of It All, especially the chorus, sort of opened my mind to the idea that you don't have to fit in any kind of rigid subgenre or anything like that. You can just kind of do whatever you want. And yeah, this is not the most consistent Sabbath record. I think others are far more consistent. Some days, nowadays, I sort of prefer listening to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I feel like even Paranoid is obviously kind of like their big, great record. You know, that one's solid, start to finish. Master of Reality, super consistent. But the highs of this one, it's my favorite Black Sabbath material. Yeah, a song like Megalomania. I mean, nobody was really doing that kind of stuff back then. And I think still today, this is my favorite record ever made, despite Am I Going Insane? Brett from Paul Bear recently described that as a Toki Wartooth dream sequence type of song. Next big discovery for me was Metallica. I tend to prefer Ride the Lightning, but, you know, I was getting really nostalgic, and this all started because a fan wrote in, my boy Tony wrote in asking if there were any record stores that changed my life. And I'll get to your question, Tony, but I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about records that changed my life. And I sort of did this list just off the top of my head, just the first stuff that came to mind. Obviously, if you're looking for some like obscure metal purist to be proving how underground his taste is, this is not that list. These are just records that, if I think back to getting into music, I remember hearing all of these for the first time. I remember how they made me feel, and I know how they make me feel now. So, you know, I think I prefer Ride the Lightning for the most part these days, but I don't remember the first time I heard that. I remember the first time I heard Master of Puppets for sure. It was a real eye-opener. It wasn't even the first Metallica record I heard, but it was just so different from anything that I'd heard that it made a serious impression. And a lot of these records that have stuck with me my whole life, I didn't really understand them at first. And Master of Puppets is one of those. You know, Battery is a perfect opener because it's kind of just perfecting what they've done on the previous 2 albums. And it's expanding it stylistically just a little bit, maybe not even really, because they did Fight Fire with Fire with the acoustic guitars and shit. But as you go on this journey of what I guess most people consider is probably the greatest metal album ever made, they're just introducing all these things that had never been done in metal before. Really bizarre turnarounds with the riffs, like some of the riffs in Orion. I still can't quite figure out how they're counting it, you know. Pretty ambitious, sophisticated stuff, especially considering the fact that these guys are like in their early 20s. And it was the sound of it, man. This is one of those records that somehow just the sonic nature of it vibes with the album cover in such a way that you're just pulled into this world. And yeah, I remember the first time I heard it and just being confused, excited, mystified, you know. And that's why it's considered by many to be the best metal record ever made. There's a lot of cliche entries on this list, and I had to leave off a lot of cliche entries, man. I was obsessed with the Doors for a while. LA Woman's one of my favorite records, but it's not on this list. But yeah, a lot of these are pretty cliche. Up next, I remember getting into Death, first death metal record I ever heard, along with In Flames, The Jester Race, melodic death metal, and Malevolent Creation, Retribution, which it really hurt me not to put both of those on this list, but I'm mentioning them anyway. But Spiritual Healing was a big game changer for me. I think the reason it clicked with me so hard is because it has elements of thrash metal, which I was familiar with by this point. You know, I'd heard all the Metallica stuff. I heard all the Slayer stuff, loved Rain and Blood, South of Heaven, Hell Awaits, all that early Slayer stuff. And Death just sort of eased me into death metal. You know, I could recognize certain aspects of the music, great guitar playing. Chuck and James Murphy together is just like an unfairly good guitar duo. James Murphy, I think, is the most, he was underappreciated at one point. I'm not sure that he is now. I think people have finally realized how much great stuff he played on. But him and Chuck together was just insane. Terry Butler co-wrote a lot of these songs, great bass parts, just really smart stuff. Again, like somehow the sound really matches that album cover, pulls you into this horrific world that they're creating, where they're moving away from like fantasy horror and talking about the horrors and atrocities of real life, which are 1,000 times scarier. I love Chuck's vocals on it. I love everything about it. It's imperfect. You know, it's a lot of weird chorusy guitar parts that are harmonized, which reminds me of Trouble. Breaks my heart that Trouble's not on this list, so I got to shout them out too. Around this time, I think I'm probably 15. I discovered this next band, Type O Negative, when I went to see Freddy versus Jason in 2003. I'm 15 years old, can't even drive yet. I remember seeing that movie, hearing a song in it, thinking, what the hell is that? Walked straight to the CD store, bought the soundtrack. You know, this is what you had to do back in the day. And I listened to that whole god-awful, shitty soundtrack to get to the last song, which is We Were Electrocute from Life is Killing Me. So I picked up that album. You know, you had to follow the trail of breadcrumbs back in the day. And I love Life is Killing Me still to this day. First Type O Negative record I ever heard. Again, that's a band that kind of, you know, the first song is I Don't Want to Be Me. It's sort of just like a punk song. But then the next songs kind of have like elements of Black Sabbath, but then there's also like sitar, like the Beatles and stuff. And I'm just remember thinking like, am I allowed to like this band? When I was a kid, I was very rigid and very, and also, you know, just adhered to these bullshit arbitrary ideas of what people are allowed to like and what's cool and what's not cool. And Black Sabbath Sabotage sort of started chipping away at that, and Type O Negative destroyed that concept completely. The next album I got by them was October Rust. This copy right here is from the box set that came out, I don't know, 12 years ago. My friend Jay Bennett did all the liner notes, interviews with the guys. October Rust is a record that as soon as I heard it, I listened to it every single day. So probably from 15 years old to 18 years old. Every day that I was in high school, running amok, going out at night, chasing gals, doing debaucherous borderline criminal activities. Nothing too bad, but it's all associated with October Rust. It brings up nostalgic, beautiful feelings that few other records tap into. About the same time, I think the documentary American Hardcore came out, and I was already super into the Misfits, and I think maybe that was really like the only punk band I was into, but I saw American Hardcore, got really into that, started getting into Black Flag. My War is the one, man. Full of piss and vinegar. They were, and I was, this was kind of like a perfect thing for that period of my life. I heard Damaged first, and I thought it sounded like dog shit, and I wasn't wrong, really. I've always just been into really good sounding records. I like some super gnarly, demo-y sounding stuff, but I'm just as much into the art of making records and producing, arranging, mixing, all that kind of stuff. That stuff is just as exciting and interesting to me as playing guitar or drums or singing or anything like that. So it took me a minute to sort of appreciate that bands like Black Flag are just totally DIY. They're figuring it out on their own. They're self-funded. I got really into this record. I remember a period in time when I was a teenager and really pissed off about quite a few things. And I would listen to Black Flag, My War all the way through running. And then I would put on Hank Williams' Greatest Hits and listen to that all the way through running. And I did that like every day, trying to get the rage out, And this is such an interesting record because the A side is sort of in the same wheelhouse as their previous efforts, although it's a little more weird, a little more atonal, a little more progressive. And then the B side, along with, early Melvins and stuff like that, maybe the first couple Carnivore records, the B side of this record invented sludge and sort of down-tuned, down-tempo noise rock, So huge record for many reasons. And, I got Get in the Van, the Henry Rollins tour journal, and got obsessed with that. And so I think the combination of My War and reading Get in the Van around like 16 years old is what really planted the seed for wanting to tour, wanting to do things DIY, not taking shit from people on the road or behind the scenes. These guys were embroiled in lawsuits with their label for years, and they were touring in a van on their own in the trenches, and reading about that and listening to this record in particular really put a demon inside of me that's still there today. So an invaluable record for me. It also really opened up the door for me to explore a style of music that didn't instantly click with me. I went on to get into Minor Threat and Bad Brains and Negative Approach and Poison Idea and all that stuff. And that's still some of my favorite music ever made. And I really appreciate now fully understanding the big picture, which is like, you don't need label help. You don't need help from anybody. Get out there and do it, and suffer. All the best artists suffer, and these guys suffered a lot, and they made everybody else suffer too with that B-side. I was kind of late to the game with Pink Floyd. I thought they were lame. I thought every band from the 70s that wasn't Black Sabbath was lame. So it took me forever to get into Zeppelin. I thought it was total pansy shit. And I felt the same way about Pink Floyd. I thought it was old people music, wimpy, dumb shit. But Dark Side of the Moon is probably objectively the greatest album ever made. And when it clicked with me, boy, howdy, did it click. Yeah, I heard this probably, we've all heard all the songs, but I really sat down and listened to it probably about 16, 17 years old. And it really clicked with me that you don't have to play super complicated, difficult parts all the time. You don't have to shred guitar a million miles an hour. Kind of the most important aspect of music is making people feel something that stays with them for the rest of their life. And few albums do that as well as this one. I went to recording school in Arizona way later, 2011. And on the last day of school, we were set up in this big, beautiful recording studio. And the instructor had a thumb drive, and he said, "I'm not allowed to let you guys hear this. This is Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon mixed in quad." So what that means is around this time in the early mid 70s, they were trying to make records. You know, most records are mixed mono or stereo, right? You have two speakers, so stereo, left and right. So they were trying this new thing called quad, which was 4 speakers, sort of a precursor to surround sound. And one of the early albums that was mixed that way was Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon. So this instructor left the thumb drive on the desk. It's the last day of class, you know, figured half the class would leave. I want to say it was me that went up there and grabbed it and stuck it in the computer and played it, which obviously we were supposed to do. And no one left. No one left. And to this day, that's the best sounding record I've ever heard. Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon mixed in quadraphonic. Yeah, I mean, if you want to learn how to produce, record, and mix a record, this is the best one. That's the best one. It's super cliche. I don't know, boomer music, whatever. But yeah, it's just a classic. A lot of people consider that the best record ever made. There's a reason for that. You know, a lot of time the masses don't know what they're talking about, but sometimes something is just so good that everybody likes it. Okay. So yeah, I'm 17, 18 years old, go to see Municipal Waste. We ended up hanging out in their van. I brought them 2 cases of beer from Kansas because Oklahoma beer was like watered down. And we hung out in the van. I remember Ryan asking me, "What kind of music do you like? What are your favorite bands?" I said Black Sabbath and Black Flag, which was the truth at the time. He said, "Oh, you got to check out Annihilation Time from California." So I checked out Annihilation Time 2. And it's one of the coolest records ever made. I mean, look at that cover. Look at how much is going on there. Everything cool that a 17-year-old kid could like. They all got acid on their tongues, cigarettes, guitar smashed through the TV. There's mushrooms growing. There's a Sun Model T, which would later become one of my favorite amps. Yeah, ended up playing with these guys when I moved to Arkansas. I think that was the first show with the first band I was in Arkansas. It was a house party. One of the greatest days of my life. It was so much fun. If you're unfamiliar with Annihilation Time, I like the second and third records the best. The second one is legendary. It is everything cool about classic hard rock / metal smashed together with everything cool about hardcore punk and obscure, yeah, first wave, you know, weirdo underground British punk and stuff like that. It's yeah, it's all the best aspects of Black Flag, all the best aspects of Black Sabbath. Guitar Hero just shredding. Graham to this day is one of my favorite guitarists who's ever lived. I've robbed a lot of techniques from that dude. And Annihilation Time 2 is one of the greatest records ever made. Graham also plays in Witch. I'm going to be talking about Witch a little bit later, unfortunately, regarding the passing of their bass player, Dave Sweetapple. Huge bummer, but I'll get into that later. Okay. Yeah, I'm in Arkansas at this point, and I accidentally attend the album release. Not accidentally, but I mean, I went there on purpose, but I didn't know it was the album release show for Wake, Voices of Omens. Shout out to Relapse, man. Shout out to Drew and Relapse. Got this new variant. They're reissuing all of the Wake stuff. There is a new Wake album coming. This thing, it's just everything cool about outsider shit in one record. I mean, I could do 10 episodes about the legends and tall tales and urban myths and folklore surrounding this band. If you were active, touring around in the early to mid 2000s, you know, they had the emissions from the Monolith Fest in Ohio, which moved to Austin, I believe. Downtown Music, legendary venue in Arkansas. if you were active in that scene, you already know what I mean. It's this is, yeah, Arkansas was a hugely pivotal time in my life. It's one of my fondest periods of my life when I look back on it. And it's a crazy place. It's, you know, you got punks and weirdos and rockers that grew up on Midnight Special and Headbangers Ball and stuff like that, colliding with Pentecostal, you know, shouting maniac snake handlers and Manson family documentaries on VHS and bathtub drugs and attempts to astral project and attempts to use occult methods to haunt yourself so that you can channel some truly horrific and terrifying music. It's psychedelic. It's got the DNA of traditional Appalachian and Southern music, you know, the DNA of the blue, the downtrodden, like suicidal Mississippi blues, and the spooky romantic aspects of like Appalachian Hill people music and country. And that's crashing into like 80s metal and black metal and sludge, and yeah, a lot of psychedelic elements and pain and hope. And yeah, one of the best records ever made, a perfect representation of Arkansas. And so much of my favorite music has come out of Arkansas: Deadbird, Pallbearer, Black Oak, Arkansas, Sea Hag, Dirt Mother, who is mixing their record right now, and it sounds really fucking good. Yeah, man, what a time to be alive. Wake, Voices of Omens. Can't wait for their next one. Okay. You know, as we get older, it becomes more and more difficult to get rocked with the gut feeling, goosebump excitement of, you know, when you're young, you hear something and you feel like you're on drugs just from the sound, you know. You get older, it's kind of like abusing any drug, I guess, or using any drug. You just kind of, the ability for it to rock your world kind of wears off, you know. So the next big record that I remember just completely rocking me to my core, Spirit Adrift was recording Divided by Darkness, and Sanford was staying at our house in Phoenix. He and I were driving to and from the studio every day, and we were listening to a lot of Rocky Erickson, The Evil One, which somehow didn't make this list. It's one of my favorite records, but, you know, had to cut it down. And we were talking about that record. We were talking about like choral type backing vocals on the Spirit Adrift records. I do a lot of layering and do falsetto vocals and all this to make it sound like there's like 10 people doing choir vocals, you know. I would say listen to the song Living Light from Divided by Darkness towards the end if you want to hear what I'm talking about. Just building a fake choir, basically. And Sanford one day was like, dude, have you ever heard this record, No Other by Gene Clark? And I was like, no, I had no idea what that even was. Gene Clark was in the Byrds, you know, America's answer to the Beatles, basically. Hugely influential band. Huge inspiration on Tom Petty, who somehow, damn the torpedoes, isn't on here, even though it should be. But I checked this record out. I'm not like, I like the Byrds. I respect them a lot. I was never super crazy about them. But guys, Gene Clark, No Other. This is one of the most haunting, powerful pieces of music ever put together. Every aspect of it is just masterfully arranged, and he was so out there. You know, he had gone off the deep end with psychedelics more than once, I'm sure. And the lyrics are so vivid, but open to interpretation. It's sort of, it's like there's some guy who's seen behind the veil of the spirit realm, and he's attempting to describe to you the universal truths that he's experienced. Anybody that's done psychedelics, you know, you experience stuff that mouth noises, words are not equipped to describe. And that's what this whole record feels like. And that's what the music feels like. too. It's a guy that's like seen too much, and he's not sure if it's the most beautiful, loving energy that he's ever been consumed by, or if it's the most dark, alarming, terrifying force he's ever been consumed by, you know? And I'm not totally sure I'm right about this, but I think he sort of got his shit together, and then the Heartbreakers covered one of his songs. And so the royalties that were pouring in, which was like more money than he'd seen in a long ass time. And I think he went back off the deep end and didn't make it. If anybody knows about Gene Clark mythology and folklore, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, this guy saw too much, and he somehow put it on a record, and it's one of the most haunting, beautiful, powerful things you will ever experience. This is the only record I've ever heard that almost stands a chance at dethroning Sabotage for my all-time favorite record. Gene Clark, no other. What's really weird is I listened to it when we were doing Divided by Darkness, and we finished that record. I didn't listen to it again for a while. And years later, like several years later, I was in Chicago on tour, and I was at the gym. I had some shuffle on Spotify. Fuck Spotify. But I had shuffle going, some kind of playlist. And I think it was like, I want to say it was like Merle Haggard shuffle or George Jones or something like that. And I had not listened to Gene Clark in like 3 years, 2-3 years. And a Gene Clark song from this record came on when I was in Chicago about to see Sanford. Yeah, creepy shit, man. It's one of those records. It opens up a portal or something when you listen to it. Okay, I left off fucking so many things. I left off Neurosis, Sun That Never Sets, which really blew my whole life apart when I heard it in the best way. Doors, LA Woman was like a huge... I left off all kinds of stuff, but I had to put a country album on here. I'm a huge country guy, and this might be highly offensive to people considering the genre has been around for like 100 years or more, depending on how you define it. But I think the best country record ever made, start to finish, is Tyler Childers' Purgatory. And I know that's crazy to say a record that came out in 2017 is better than all the preceding albums. But, you know, if I had to pick a favorite country artist, it'd probably be Waylon. He has some bulletproof records. Dreamin' My Dreams is bulletproof. Honky Tonk Heroes is bulletproof. I own more Waylon Jennings records than any other artist, and they're all good. But none of those individual records are as perfect, bulletproof, varied in the best possible way. It's varied out to the edges of what I would really want out of country music, but it doesn't go past that and turn into something totally different. Nothing is as consistent from start to finish as Tyler Childers' Purgatory. I'm half Kentuckian, and maybe there's something in my DNA that really strongly recognizes what's going on here. But yeah, start to finish, it's like you get every kind of good country song. You got the getting super fucked up and being wild and totally untamed kind of thing with White House Road. I think that's dude, when I moved to Texas and put on FM radio and heard a guy yelling about doing cocaine and dying and being on a cutting board or cooling board or whatever, I was like, what the fuck? And I think that song really made an impact on a lot of people. But you know, there's also like the really, really down, depressed, painful type of songs. There's the being in love with the girl you can never have type of songs. There's, you know, feeling guilty because you're surrounded by religious zealots, but you're a fucking total animal kind of songs. There's the one guy with the guitar pouring his heart out kind of thing. Universal Sound is one of the coolest songs ever written. I went to see him at Red Rocks, and he did 2 nights back to back. And I think I picked the better night, but he didn't play Universal Sound my night, which sucks. Is a lot of these records that I've been describing up to this point, like if you took all the best country and Gene Clark and Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, threw them together. That's universal sound. Never, you know, Sturgill had kind of messed around with psychedelic out there kind of country stuff, but Tyler took it to a different level, and Sturgill co-produced this one too. So yeah, I don't know. Meta Modern Sounds by Sturgill Simpson is up there. Dreaming My Dreams by Waylon is up there. Billy Joe Shaver self-titled. David Allan Coe, some of that early stuff will break your heart. But I think Tyler Childers' Purgatory is the best country record ever made. I said it. Okay. Again, we age, we lose our ability to be completely mystified and excited and awestruck by records. The last one that did it to me, man, and I really started digging into it when I went on my little Tyler Childers retreat to Colorado, my little soul search journey. Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dream. Yeah. You know, I was a kid in the 90s when MTV was showing nothing really but music videos and Beavis and Butthead and stuff like that. I remember the first time I heard Bullet with Butterfly Wings and Tonight in 1979 and all that stuff. And I like almost all of that stuff that was floating around on MTV those days, even if it's like something dumb like Seven Mary 3 or like Natalie and Bruglia or something. Because I was like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. You know, that's the first time I heard Slayer was on MTV, and just a very special time. But I never really got super into Pumpkins. I think his voice bothered me. You know, if I was going to listen to something like that, I'd much rather hear Soundgarden, Super Unknown, Bad Motorfinger, or I know they're not that similar, but like Melvins or Alice in Chains, Dirt, something like that. But I started watching interviews with these guys and really sort of delving into the process of making this album. And I kind of feel like since Dark Side of the Moon, there wasn't a record that went that deep with the production and the arrangement and the vibe, and, you know, really trying to going to every possible, you know, plumbing the depths of your soul, losing your mind. Jimmy Chamberlain was like strung out when they were recording it, and he would just disappear and then come in and just lay down like one of the sickest, most human, just combustible drum performances you've ever heard. And then he would just like disappear again. They recorded it in Atlanta because they thought if they took their operation somewhere that was unfamiliar to them, that Jimmy wouldn't be able to score drugs. But day one, he was scoring drugs in Atlanta and disappearing. And Billy Corgan had a nervous breakdown making the album and almost killed himself. And when you listen to it, you know you're experiencing something really special. The 90s, like mid 90s, I would say, was the peak of like big money, really high production value, really massive projects when it came to making records. I think that was the height of the resources, I guess I'm trying to say. And man, they put, you know, it's not about money, but it's about what you can do with money. If you have limitless money, you can spend limitless time working on an album, which can either be good or sort of reach a point of diminishing returns at a certain juncture. But I think the greatest representation of that 90s infinite resources, let's make something that lasts forever kind of thing, is Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream. The sounds are just insane. It's like, listen to the song Hummer, listen to the first guitar solo. I mean, the guitar tones, and again, you know, kind of going back to Leonard Skinner, figuring out how to place everything, how to place 2 different guitars or 3 different guitars or 10 different guitars and backing vocals and weird sounds, and layering up the experience from start to finish with such deep, like, hidden treasures that people can listen to it for the rest of their lives and feel something different, hear something different, and find little goodies, you know, the whole time. So that's it, man. 13. I got it down to 13. I know I mentioned a bunch of other records, but I didn't really fully cheat. You guys know the drill. Let me know in the comments, 5 or 10 records that you remember the first time you heard them. You remember them changing your life in some sort of like concrete and profound way. I like talking about it. I like thinking about it. This whole thing is about appreciating music that has meant a lot to us in our lives. Write me at bigriffenergy@gmail.com if you have questions or you want me to talk about something. And I'm going to get to fan questions here in a second. Man, I hate eulogizing cool people. Dave Sweetapple from Witch has passed away. Man, and they just played Austin. They just played Psych Fest on the day with all the Witch bands. I thought that was so funny that I think it was like the middle day. They had all them witches and LA Witch, and I think the Black Angels played that day. I'm not going to talk too much about this self-titled record. I didn't know Dave, but this is another record that sort of blew my mind. Not sort of, totally blew my mind the first time I heard it. I was a senior in high school. I've talked a lot about this record already. It's one of the best. Like, I hate the term stoner rock. I fucking hate it so much. I want to slap the taste out of your mouth when you say that, thinking that it's cool. Psych doom, whatever. We get it. You're a fucking douchebag. But this is one of the best records in that style ever made. I would put it up there with Holy Mountain. I would put it up there with, I know it's a lot different. Caius, Welcome to Sky Valley. I was just listening to that, just riffy, Sabbathy, psyched out. Great vocals, great everything. Fucking awesome record, man. So I didn't even realize that Dave ran TP Records, which is a killer label, legendary, independent label. And man, a lot of people really loved that guy. And I think he made a huge positive impact in rock music, so my heart goes out to everyone that was close with him. Check out that Witch self-titled album. It's great. Also, man, super horrible. Darren Beck from Pinkish Black passed away. I know he was struggling with health problems for a while. And Joe from Pallbearer got me into Pinkish Black when they first came out. I've talked about them before. I got their first record. I think it's their first record. It was their self-titled, Behind Me. There's nothing like it. I love them, man. I saw them many, many, many times. They're just a two-piece. Darren was a genius, dude. Deeply, deeply intelligent, artistic person. He would just set up with a shitload of keyboards and synthesizers and shit that makes noise, and he would sing and just create a fucking symphony of horror and dread and longing. And John, the drummer, is like one of the most powerful drummers since John Bonham. I mean, he has that kind of vibe. He has a Bonham kind of behind the beat. Everything is just massive, unless it needs to be a little more vulnerable and reserved, and just great dynamics and powerful. Man, they were so fucking powerful live. I remember seeing them at the Marquee Theater in Phoenix, Arizona. They were opening for Goblin from Italy, and Pinkish Black dude, I'd seen them in dives and, little bars and shit, and they're great. They were great every single time. But Pinkish Black through that system at the Marquee, they were doing stuff that was so disorienting and trippy and heavy that I got like vertigo in the middle of the Marquee. I literally was like about to fall over, and I had to go just sit down on the floor, I don't know if Darren was like using a phaser or like panning stuff a certain way or what, but it was, just this swirling chaos of awesome, like Tangerine Dream sounding organic, fucked up synthesizer, just totally enveloping your whole being with that sound. And John is just kicking the shit out of the kick drum, and it's coming like a fucking boulder coming down a hill, like right in the middle of all this swirling fucking chaos, I'll never forget that. I think they're the only band that ever made me sit down. They were so heavy. So, man, I'm going to miss Darren. I didn't do a good job of keeping in touch with him. And it sucks. It sucks. He was a really nice guy. Another one of those guys that you're probably not going to meet anybody that had a bad thing to say about him. He went on American Idol too one time and trolled the fuck out of him. And he was doing his thing for sure, but trolled the living shit out of him. And if you can find that on YouTube, it's so funny. I don't know. I've seen it, but I wasn't able to find it recently. Very special guy, very special band. And I fucking hate this. Why can't some of these fucking warmongers or, heads of these corporations that got their boot on our neck be the people that are dropping dead all day, every day? Maybe soon. Hopefully soon. I don't mean that. Yes, I do. No, I don't. I'm trying to confuse YouTube so they don't demonetize me. It's a joke, but it's not. Okay, gonna go to questions. Tony, when your secret album project has a release date, you'll tell us here, right? Yeah, you'll hear about it. I recently watched It Came from Aquarius Records about the store in San Francisco that closed in 2016, 47 years after it opened, and made me think about Metal Haven, the only record store I'd ever been to that specialized exclusively in metal from 99 to 2010. It was initially just a couple blocks from me in Chicago and coincided with my starting to buy more metal albums after a lull in the 90s. Do you have a record store that changed your life at some point? I absolutely do, man. I'll talk about like the one that did it, but you know what? I was lucky in the sense that the FYE at the mall in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, where I walked to right after seeing Freddy vs. Jason to figure out who Typo Negative was. Yeah, it's a FYE. I'm not shouting out FYE, but there was a dude in there. I walked in there the first day I heard Black Sabbath and just walked up to the guy and said, I need Black Sabbath. I was like 12. And this dude took it upon himself to be a guide to cool metal for this kid. And I went to that FYE until I was 18. So 6 years. And every time I would go in, this guy would chat with me. He was probably in his 20s. And I don't even know the guy's name. I don't know, but that dude like changed my life for sure. FYE, obviously corporate, who cares? I don't even think it's around anymore. But I wish I could figure out who that dude was. So if you worked at FYE in Bartlesville, Oklahoma from 2002 to 2006, no, 2000, the year 2000 to 2006, and you remember like helping a kid figure out what Black Sabbath was and Slayer and all that kind of stuff, please reach out. But no, the record store that really did it for me was Starship Records in Tulsa. And when it was at the old location, it's still really, really cool. We went in there when we were in Tulsa last time, gave them some records. I just thanked them. I told them, I'd been going there since I was 14 or whatever. But when it was at the old location, I put pictures up on here before. It was like two little wooden hobbit houses that were like bright orange and bright blue, both of them, kind of like reverse images of each other, And one of them was like a head shop. It had like merch, like band shirts and Scarface posters and all the typical shit, and like weed paraphernalia and probably suspect like over the counter fake psychedelic drugs and all that kind of shit. The other building was just CDs and vinyl, and every wall of the place was just a glass front from floor to ceiling, and the CDs were just stacked on top of each other with the label facing out. And yeah, that place changed my life. This was, by this time I'd sort of figured out how to use the internet and find like similar artists to stuff that I liked. So I would go in there. I got like I Hate God, Dope Sick in there, Dark Throne, Transylvanian Hunger. First Mastodon album came out when I was 15. Got that there. Neurosis. I discovered all kinds of stuff by going there. And yeah, Starship is still around. It's in Tulsa. If you are ever in Tulsa, go see them because it still rules. It's basically the same thing. They've just moved into a different location. Dude, Astro Records in Bastrop, honestly was like one of the most consistent record stores I've ever gone in. I think partially because Lippy figured out what we all like, and you know, so he would have like St. Vitus Hallows Victim in there signed by the band and shit. Couldn't not buy it. Every time I went in there, I was like, God damn it, there's something like great that I couldn't pass up. Lippy's gone, man. He's not gone, but he's in a different area now. Trying to think. I like Amoeba in Hollywood a lot. Obviously, that's sort of a bigger, it's not corporate, definitely not corporate, but sort of a bigger record store, but great. That's where I bought that copy of Black Flag My War, actually. Vinyl Altar in Philly is awesome. Shout out to Vinyl Altar. These places are precious, man. They're endangered, and yeah, we need to support them because they're going away. A lot of them are going away. Speaking of which, Luke from Void Witch. I'm going to go ahead and shout out Void Witch, new album, which came out a month and a half ago on Everlasting Spew Records. It is called Horripilating Presence. I'm going to throw it up here. I'll make this the album of discussion, I guess. This and Pinkish Black, first album. Please check that out. Dude, this is great. I already thanked you, Luke, directly, but I've been hearing about you guys for a long time. I'm just a fucking hermit. I got a lot of shit going on. Good, bad, and ugly. And yeah, I'm sorry I missed y'all's show. But if you guys are whoever's listening that likes Hooded Menace, I saw you guys get compared to Temple of Void. I think that's a fair comparison. Yeah, old Morbid Angel, fucked up guitar harmonies, even some of the heavier aspects of Opeth. I'm hearing some cool like traditional metal guitar harmonies, and yeah, but it reminds me of my favorite Hooded Menace record, Ossuarium Silhouettes Unhallowed. So guys, check out Void Witch, Horripilating Presence. I'm so glad you reached out, Luke, because I've been meaning to check you guys out for a long time. Okay, here we go. My name is Luke. I play bass and do vocals in a local Austin death doom band called Void Witch. I'm a longtime Spirit Adrift fan, and I've been listening to your podcast from the beginning. Really enjoy your perspective, interviews, and storytelling. It's always a good day when I see a new episode has dropped. Thanks for the cool takes and sick riffs. Thanks, Luke. Yeah, I missed a week, guys, and I'm not gonna lie. I didn't feel like doing it. I just didn't care. I've been sort of struggling with that. It almost feels like it's contagious. I feel like I can't figure out what people, generally speaking, care about nowadays. It doesn't seem to be what I care about. But then I have to remind myself, like, who gives a fuck? Like, this is a niche thing. I talk about what I want to talk about. That's the formula. And that's it. I don't need to try to like figure out, what is it that people care about right now? I don't know if it's like all the countless psyops that are being done on us or wearing us down, or maybe it's just me and I'm projecting it out into the world at large or something. But it seems like nobody gives a fuck about anything right now. And it seems contagious, but maybe that's just a psyop that I'm falling prey to. Anyway, yeah, I think I got my groove back now. Okay, Luke, I was hoping to get a little of your advice on our situation. We're a bunch of dudes who played in bands in our 20s, then life got in the way, etc. We're doing it again, but 40-ish with kids and job responsibilities that make touring basically impossible. We just dropped our first album and we've been playing shows every 2 months or so around Austin. My question is, what advice do you have for a band just starting out that isn't going to tour? We're hoping to continue to get on cool shows, maybe some festivals eventually, but it seems a bit of an uphill battle without paying our dues and getting on the road, or at least playing more often. It wouldn't be the worst thing to just stick to what we're doing, but it'd be cool to branch out a bit more. Dude, just keep doing what you're doing. These last 2-3 weeks, I don't know if you've noticed, but I saw more tour and festival cancellations that I've ever seen since COVID. Nothing is fixed as far as that world goes. You probably notice it's kind of the same handful of bands that are touring over and over. Like there's just fewer bands touring. And there's little ecosystems set up where somebody just sends an email to somebody, you know, a representative of a band sends an email to somebody else, and it's like, it almost just sort of resembles like a corporate structure. And so if you're not directly plugged into that, you got to like jump through all kinds of hoops and do it like Black Flag style. I mean, shit, Helmet canceled a tour. They're the first band that's ever been honest about it and just said, nobody bought tickets and we can't afford to do it. No, like when your society is fucked to the point that no one has any money, things are going to start going away, man. Like anything that's not shelter, food, or water is going to start going away. And I think that's just where we're at right now. I talk to a lot of people that like sell shit online and this and that. And it just seems like people just don't have the resources to like buy tickets and go to shows and pay for parking. And the same corporations that have put us in this position are wiping out independent venues or buying up independent venues and ruining them with merch cuts and stuff like that. I don't really give a shit. That's the truth of it. The reason I tell you this is because unless you're like have a specific band that you really look up to and worship and you want to tour with them, I don't see that much of a point for a band in your guys' position to tour. So I would say just keep making sick ass music. You know, I've for a long time wanted to start. I think I could engineer a record, you know, record a record and possibly even, I mean, I definitely could engineer a record, meaning record it. I could mix a record, but it probably wouldn't be great, but it'd probably be better than a lot of records that are making top 10 lists. But what I really want to do is like produce, which for me would basically mean just hear tunes, you know, in advance of like recording dates, get my 2 cents, hang out, participate in the vibe, throw ideas around, stuff like that. I really like your guys' album, man. And I don't know if that's something that's interesting to y'all at all, but you know, if you guys are working on another record at some point, maybe it'd be a good first opportunity for me to dip my toes into that. It probably won't affect your situation that you're writing me about, but that's just kind of an aside. So if you're interested in that, man, I'd love to hear anything that y'all are working on. And yeah, I'll do it for free. Obviously, just hang out and try to tap into a vibe with y'all, you know, because I really like what you're doing. Yeah, dude, just keep writing, keep playing shows. I don't know. I don't fucking know, dude. Like I was saying, I've talked to people that, you know, technically I would say are small business owners. I'm a small business owner. I'm self-employed. Any income that I'm getting, I have to fucking generate. And I know a lot of people who are in the same position, whether they're selling bootleg t-shirts or whatever. You know, social media used to be something that we could all use to promote our small businesses. And it used to be, you know, on Facebook, you could make a post about something that your band is doing and your followers would see it. Then they sort of decided, you know what, you have this many followers. We're going to let 0 people see it. And for every $20 you give us, we'll let 20 people see it. And so then everybody went to Instagram. Now Instagram's doing the same shit. They're also like, here we go. They're literally like censoring certain kinds of information. But they're also just putting their boot on the neck of anybody that's trying to do their own thing. And they want you to pay them to promote your own thing. So like doing social media to me doesn't fucking work. I don't think it would ever be worth it to like invest in like advertising on social media. Shit's dumb as hell. I've done a little bit of that on YouTube actually, and it seems to work out a little bit, but Meta is just the fucking actual devil. YouTube ain't perfect either, but these people are the devil, man. I saw Zuckerberg came out, sort of acknowledged that he's the devil a little bit, but you can't control any of that. you know, you can lose your fucking mind. I have in the past lost my mind trying to figure out how to climb some sort of like imaginary ladder or something. And I hate to give you like a philosophical answer instead of a purely strategic, like concrete logistical answer, but just enjoy what you're doing. Don't even think about wanting it to be another way or anything like that. And things will come your way. You know, if you just keep, the important thing is you keep writing good songs, recording them, putting them out, climbing the ladder. I'm going to talk to Dave at 20 Bucks Spin about you guys. I know he's trying to not sign bands because he's got his fucking hands completely full. But yeah, man, I'll do whatever I can to help y'all, because I really don't like, the music industry shifted a lot over the past, whatever, 20, 30 years, but post-COVID, it's just gone. Like it just doesn't, anything that I knew about how to do it, it's not that way anymore. You know what I mean? And you're seeing that because bands are having to cancel. Like so many bands that aren't just already established for the past 2 decades or whatever are buying on to tours. I'm going to go ahead and throw them under the bus. This band Oni that you see on certain like bigger douchey kind of tours, I think the dude's dad like invented some kind of algorithm for the stock market or something. So they just like bought a tour bus and bought all this shit and buy onto the tours. And if you ever see a tour and there's like an opening band or two and you're like, who the fuck is that? Like, why are they on that tour? They probably paid money to be on the tour. And who wants to fucking do that? Who wants to do that? Fuck that. So just keep making cool music, and whatever I can do, I'll try to help y'all for sure. I really like it. Okay. P.S. Did you hear about the Lost Wells situation? Pretty much the epicenter for the local Austin underground scene, and the building's getting sold out from under the bar. A huge bummer. Yeah, dude, I was just telling my wife, that's the last venue that existed when I was like in the heyday of touring, coming through Austin. That's the last one, and it's gone. It's crazy, man. Austin's fucked. I looked at a side by side of like, I think the Statesman put it on YouTube or something. Austin like 2003 to 2006 versus now. Totally unrecognizable, man. Yeah, it's a drag. Even out where we're at, you know, we moved to a small town to get away from douchebags. And okay, here we go. I'm just going to go in. A lot of dudes in like extreme metal bands pretend to be misanthropic because it's like an aesthetic or something. But they're all fucking kumbaya behind the scenes. They're all like a bunch of nice motherfuckers. But your boy is truly misanthropic, and I have to really, really work to not be. But like, we moved out to a small town to get away from the general public because I fantasize about killing people when I'm in the general public, like literally. And, you know, things were killer out here for a while. And then all the fucking corporate tech douchebag people started coming out here. They pushed a lot of people from Austin out to where we are. And we used to have a spot down here 10 minutes from our house where we could take our dogs and like go in the river and shit. And the dogs would swim around. And we had to stop going because every single time we went, it's covered in trash, like covered in trash, covered. And being wasted ain't no excuse, man. I would outdrink every person at that fucking river combined in my heyday. But I fucking pick up after myself like an adult human being who gives a shit about the planet and other people. And so we can't even go down there anymore. So we're going to have to move to fucking the hills of West Virginia or something. Yeah, I hate it. I hate it. If you go out and party out in nature and leave trash, I hope you fucking die, literally, right now. Okay, PPS. If you are interested in checking out some local Austin death doom here. Oh, yeah, I already read that part. Okay, Luke, sorry, I was all over the fucking map on that. But, yeah, just keep me posted on what y'all are doing, man. I'm going to hit you back up. Scott. Scott from Cloak. Shout out Cloak. Great fucking band. Going on tour with the Deicide, right? I think. I'm going to try to holler at you guys in Austin, Scott, if I'm around. We were listening to the podcast at work, and our guitarist and I were curious about Matt Harvey's best advice about the music business. If you don't mind sharing, curious about that. He always seemed like a down-to-earth guy. Yeah, so last Gate Creeper tour I did was with Exhumed, and I was in negotiations, I would say, in communication with Century Media. Spirit Adrift had been on 20 Buck Spin up to that point. Never had a problem with 20 Buck Spin. Still my favorite label I've ever worked with. But I was kind of like, I wonder how big we could take this, you know, just I like challenging myself, and I'm curious about new experiences and stuff like that. And I remember talking to Harvey about it, and he was like, yeah, man, just see what you can do with it. And it'll probably, you know, in most cases, it's kind of a win-win. You know, you're in the sea of shit, right? Just picture like the ocean. That's all the influx of like constant bands that are just, there's so much shit coming out that people have a hard time even like finding out about stuff. But he described that as like the ocean. And I don't know if he said dolphin or this is the mental image that I have in my mind when I think of this conversation. But he said, you know, if you work with a label like that, you can utilize all of their resources, which is like more money, bigger, although, you know, some of it is debatable. But theoretically speaking, it's like they've got a wider reach. They've got more publicity. They've got more distribution, you know, just like an ecosystem there that's a lot more massive. That's true. I'll say it's a lot more massive, for better or worse, than a label like 20 Buck Spin. He said you can utilize that to pop your head above water. So I'm seeing like a dolphin like popping up out of the surface, you know? And he's like, maybe you'll keep going, or if you don't, you know, at least you popped your head up and more people saw you, and now you're back where you're comfortable, you know? And I thought that was such a great, I don't know if he used that visual metaphor or if my overactive imagination just like painted a mental picture while he was talking to me, but he was absolutely right about all of that. And, you know, I didn't sign to a bigger label with any sort of like naive expectations of, you know, delusions of grandeur of anything. Which put me in a good position to negotiate, because I was perfectly happy with the situation I was in. But I wanted to see what would happen going to like a bigger label. I didn't even talk to Nuclear Blast because literally everybody was signing to Nuclear Blast at the time. This was when Century Media wasn't really signing a lot of bands. They had picked up Blood Incantation, and I think we were the next one out of that wave. And then they really started signing bands out of that, you know. But I'm glad I did it, you know. I think technically Spirit Adrift are free agents now. I'm going to kind of show my hand. I'll do a whole episode on this. But part of the reason I sort of put Spirit Adrift on hiatus was to let the Century Media deal run out, which fortunately everybody I've worked with over there is super cool. We all really get along and respect each other. And we had a good talk, and I was like, hey, yeah, I think I'm an undergrounder, dude. I'm not sure I'm cut out for the kind of more, I don't want to say corporate, but that's, you know, that's the vibe I got. But Harvey was right about everything, man. And I talked to Dave from 20 Buck Spin before I made that decision, and it was all very mature and very adult and very measured and strategic. And I tried it, and Kenny Powers is a fucking free agent now, baby. Tony from Australia. We got 2 more, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. Good day, Nate. I emailed you a few times early on in the Big Riff Energy adventure, and you were kind enough to read them out. Just wanted to say that I still rate Spirit Adrift with Metallica, Priest, Maiden, and Van Halen as my top 5 bands. God damn, man. I remember you, bro. That's crazy. Of course, the riffs, leads, chugs, and harmonies all sing to me, but most of all, I really appreciate that you actually sing. As far as metal vocals go, I have you in. No, I'm not reading that. Thank you, bro. That would just be too masturbatory if I read all that. You know what you said, and I know what you said. Thank you. Anyway, thanks for the great music and the YouTube channel. Fingers crossed that someday you make it down under. That would rule, man. There's a lot of Australian metal maniacs that write into the show. It's really cool. It's like the per capita representation from Australia is fucking off the charts, man. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that a lot, man. Vocals are the hardest instrument by far. That's the most work I've put into anything for sure. And it's very obscure. What's the word for hidden? Not occult. I always forget. I love this word, but it's sort of like secret. You guys know what word I'm trying to figure out. It's like very mysterious in a weird kind of way to figure out how to get your voice to work the way you want it to, because it's all internal. And your body is your instrument, and the body is very finicky, you know, and it's very complex. It's a lot more complex than any other instrument, like a guitar or anything like that. And plus you can see the guitar, you can see the drums. So it takes so much attention and experience, like physical experience. And I've been watching recently, there was a show in the 70s and early 80s called The Midnight Special. It was London, took place in London, I think. But it was kind of like a variety show. If anybody's seen Late Night with the Devil, I think Midnight Special is one of several like 70s late night shows that sort of inspired that. But I've been watching a lot of those performances, and it's like some of them I can tell it's backing tracks and just vocals, but most of them they're playing. And the singers in the 70s are just like the rock singers. And there's even like James Brown and Al Green. Al Green actually fucking sucked. I think he was too fucked up or something. But those people were like unprecedented in rock vocals for sure. And I just study whether it's like Stevie Nicks or the dude from REO Speedwagon or Joe Walsh or, you know, Thin Lizzy plays at Phil. Great voice. They just made it seem so effortless. And their behavior sort of throws conventional wisdom out the window because they're all drinking, doing drugs, and smoking cigarettes. Which, by the way, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think smoking cigarettes is a key to being a great rock vocalist. Look at all your favorite rock vocalists and tell me if they're smoking cigarettes or not. And that's a trade secret, man. I am an idiot, so don't take this too seriously, but I'm at a point in my life where I've experienced recording vocals enough that I've kind of wholeheartedly believe that smoking cigarettes is crucial, and not vaping. Fuck that vape bullshit. Yeah, maybe not the best role model to be saying that. Ricardo, last one. Man, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to address your email last week, Ricardo, so I'm going to do it right now. Innate recently found your channel a few days ago and immediately bonded with you. Just want to share my appreciation for you, your channel, and introduce myself. My name is Rick, vocalist, guitarist for my band Sacred Origin. Check out Sacred Origin from California, by the way. They're sick, like death thrash, old school. Yeah, like California, like Sadistic Intent and shit like that. Hyrax, fucking Possessed. Yeah, I just turned 41, and like anyone going on that hell path, I completely made bridges with everything you shared on your past with drugs and alcohol. I was also at death's door knocking and sometimes trying to break in since I was 15. Yeah, dude, me too. I was just thinking about all my near-death experiences the other day, and I forgot about one where I was changing a tire on a Toyota Avalon, and I was on my back underneath the car and it slipped off the jack. I had forgotten about that one. Yeah, like you, I've been sober since March 2015, but celebrated my first year anniversary by discovering my girlfriend at the time had been cheating on me. I bumped into her sitting in a restaurant with another man's arm around her. Went up to the table. Dude quickly removed his arm from around her, which meant he knew who I was. I didn't make a scene and told her we had just been together on Valentine's Day. She cried and ran out of the place. Broke me to my core. I had been trying so much to better myself and fix our relationship since I thought I was doing it for her. I knew this was a perfect excuse to get loaded, but instead took myself to a meeting because I realized I was staying sober for myself. Yeah, dude, that's the only way it'll work. Doing it for yourself. It sounds selfish, and so much about it is trying to fix all those character defects that make us so selfish. But there's something about it where, if it's court ordered, it doesn't hardly ever work. If it's dictated by a wife or whoever, odds of it working are slim. But if you're doing it for yourself, for some reason, that seems to be the most consistent way of finding some success. Anyway, I knew I had an emotional debt I owed from all the people in my life I hurt and broke in my hell. It was my turn now. Yeah, dude. I didn't make myself a victim. It was just my turn. Yeah. One of the most important guys in my life says it's the fucking you get for the fucking you gave. Try to remind myself that this day when shit goes sideways, I still have an emotional debt I owe. So I try to take it with an easy stride. It can be difficult at times, but it's a forever process. I never say I quit because it feels like an insurmountable task, so I take it one day at a time. So far, it's been 9 years. I don't like counting the years, but my ego likes to keep track. Yeah, Waylon and Johnny Cash were on David Letterman, I think, said something about like, doesn't seem right to throw ourselves a parade for quitting something we shouldn't have been doing in the first place. It's been through these 9 years of sobriety. I have been able to venture out into the world and meet new people, start a band, became a father to my 9-month-old baby, and just begun to look at the world with starry eyes. Sometimes I still feel new to my surroundings. I never celebrate the annual accomplishment of sobriety because to me, I see it as celebrating my own mediocrity of not being able to control myself and always taking things further than I'm physically capable to the point of death. Yeah, I feel I'm kind of the same way, Rick, but at the same time, it's if you can get out of that and stay out of that, that is such a rare achievement, just statistically speaking, that I think it's okay to, and I'm sure you do, I think it's okay to sit in gratitude for the fact that you don't have to live like that anymore. And, I've also heard people say that when you get an anniversary or a year coin, the first one's for you and all the rest of them are for someone else who needs to see that it's possible. And I really like looking at it that way. I am forever vigilant in this because sometimes the evil speaks louder than usual, and the dangerous part is feeling comfortable with the ideas. I've been there at my lowest depth, been homeless, experienced the coldness of the streets, felt hunger in many forms. You are a brother in the world of pain and redemption. In sobriety, I didn't lose myself, didn't lose my anti-authority, free-thinking, creative punk rock outlaw part of my personality, and I didn't get all churchy either. Much love and respect to you, brother. Hell yeah, Rick. I love this kind of stuff, man. It, guys like us flounder around for purpose, or at least I do. And I've been floundering around a lot for purpose lately. I think everybody probably feels that way in the last, 4 years or whatever. Kind of woke us up to good and bad things. But in these moments, I feel like I got a purpose here. And you do too. You said something too, man. Another one of my buddies, you said you're forever vigilant because sometimes the evil speaks louder than usual. Another good friend of mine talks about like every single day that he wakes up, the other guy is like sitting at the foot of the bed waiting, it's him, but it's the other guy. And that he every fucking day, and this dude is decades sober. And he said every single day, as soon as he becomes conscious to the world, he has to put practices into motion to make sure that it's him that walks out to face the world and not that other guy that's sitting there waiting for him every fucking day. If anybody's trying to get sober, I'm sure that sounds like a fucking nightmare. And it's not. It gets a lot easier, man. But it's just, you don't have to think about like, oh, I got to be sober forever. That's why they say it's one day at a time. But yeah, you got to be vigilant, man. You got to have purpose, and clearly you got purpose with the kid and with the band. Everybody check out Sacred Origins. Shit rips. Super badass. Yeah, for fans of Possessed and Hyrax and Sadistic Intent, maybe like Goat Horror, stuff like that. I think that's it, guys. I'm going to try real hard to do another one next week. If not, I will see you soon. Write me at bigriffenergy@gmail.com. Subscribe, like, click the bell, do all that stuff. The more people subscribe, the more people see it. And yeah, the more cool stuff I can do on here, and the more we can help each other through awesome music and human connection, and try to shield ourselves from all the psyops that will be occurring for the next, I don't know, hopefully in 6 months or so. It dies down once this bullshit's all over. All right, y'all. See you soon.